So you have designed a focus group, gotten participants, a setting, you have a moderator, you've written a discussion guide, and you've hosted your focus group. So you've done your 1 hour or so where people have answered your questions. So how do you analyze the results of a focus group? Well, you have a moderator debriefing immediately after your focus group. So we do some instant analysis. Instant analysis is to get the moderator and the moderator team, anyone who was hosting the event, to brainstorm how well it went and what they heard. If you have your client standing behind a glass who observed it, what did they hear? The key here is to look at whether all the parties who heard the feedback, did they all come to the same conclusion? So do we all hear the same themes, the same sentiment from the people who participated? So we're looking at what is the theme? What are the most important points? What was surprising or unexpected? What quotes were particularly helpful? How was this group similar to or different from earlier groups? So if you've done this same focus group with multiple different 8 to 12 participants, are you hearing the same thing from them? And does anything need to be changed before the next group? Now be careful about too much change, because if you overhaul and ask completely different questions or you probe, if you make too much change, then it's hard to kind of put it all together. But you might be finding that you're not probing enough in one particular question. And so you need to get a bit more deeper with the next group. So when it comes to our analysis of our qualitative data should be systematic, verifiable, sequential, and continuous. So what do we mean by that? Well, what we mean by systematic is that, question is, where did I put this on the screen here? Systematic, we're going to follow a prescribed sequence. Okay. So if we have a systematic analysis, we're going to follow a prescribed sequence. That prescribed sequence, we're going to look at themes. We're going to look at most important points. We're going to look at what's surprising. We're going to look at what was similar or different between groups. And so the process for our analysis is going to be a sequence that we will follow each time we do that focus group, each time we do a focus group. When we get to the further analysis of the transcript, we're going to do a method called cut, sort, arrange. And so that follows a prescribed sequence. We are going to take our transcript, we are going to cut it into comments, and we are going to sort it. And we're going to then find themes for each pile where we have sorted the information. So we're going to follow a prescribed sequence. This helps ensure that if somebody else was to conduct this focus group, they would have similar findings. Okay, then we need verifiable. And verifiable means that others would arrive at the same conclusions. Okay, so by following that prescribed sequence, by having the rest of our moderator team brainstorm immediately after to make sure they all came to the same kind of conclusions, we are looking at increasing the verifiability of our results, that other people who were in the room drew the same conclusions. And then later when we're doing an analysis of the transcript, we want to take an approach so that others who are doing the same steps would come to the same conclusions. That is, these are the top priorities, these are the key themes, this is what the group was saying. When it comes to our focus group, we do have a sequential process. So there is a process of enlightenment where we gain knowledge. So we are likely to conduct multiple focus groups. We're only doing 8, 12 people at a time. And we're going to learn something new and additional each time, which is why when we do that instant analysis, we have that discussion with the group. How did it go? What did we learn? What was similar or different? And we're looking at, do we need to do further probing with the next group? So anything that needs to be changed before the next group, but recognizing that we don't necessarily want wholesale change because you're really still trying to get to those key questions. And you don't want to basically infer, well, this group cared about this and this group only cared about this, and it was more because the questions we asked were different. Okay, so we might add questions to help with probing. We don't necessarily want to wholesale change questions. We might find that the wording of a question isn't clear, and we could do some of that cleanup. Just recognize that if you are changing how people infer, then it could be a risk that you are pushing them a different direction. So you can't say, well, one group felt this way and the other group felt that way. That's why our focus groups are really for brainstorming. We can't really say, well, everyone felt like this. In order to find out how everyone truly feels, then you need to take it into a survey or more quantitative analysis. Okay. And then continuous. Does the analysis improve the data collection, right? So again, making some changes, but small changes just to get better data, not to take us in a different direction, okay? So when it comes to, we do that initial debriefing immediately after while everything is fresh, while we remember how people responded in terms of the nonverbal cues are all fresh in our mind, we would have that discussion with the team. And then later, after we have transcribed all of the comments and themes, we take our where did I put it? Here we go. Notes and quotes, right? So we'll have our notes and we'll have our quotes, or we'll have a full transcript. And the next thing we want to do to that is we want to then analyze that information. And the classical analysis strategy is called cut, sort, arrange, where we're going to identify themes and categorize comments from the transcript or from our notes. So we want to identify the extensiveness of themes, but we need to be careful again about saying what percentage feel one way or another, because you might have in your transcript that the same person gave 20 comments on a topic. It doesn't necessarily mean that that topic is the most important from the greater group. Again, that's why qualitative methods often inform quantitative methods. So how would we go about doing this? All right, so here's the results of a focus group on professional development funds being used for technology. Here are all the comments that people made, right? And so this is the full transcript. How would we do this analysis? Well, what we would do is I'd print this out, and then I would take some scissors and I would cut this into strips. Okay. And then what we would do is we would take these strips and we would start making little piles based on themes. So if they were focused on, and this is for technology, if they were focused on the technology itself and what types of technology they could use for professional development, that's a pile. If it was about the helping train the faculty member to use the technology and some of the supports that were available, that would be a pile. If it is about some of the challenges, that could be a pile. So you can, basically what I typically do is have the team all have copies and they each can make their own piles. So the piles are the team, each person who's doing this analysis, identify the themes themselves. And then we would compare. Here's the type of themes I came up with based on all making my piles. And then somebody else, here's the themes I came up with making my piles. And then these pieces here support that theme. And if we have quotes, if these are word for word what people said, then we can also use that in our report to help back up why this is a priority or this is an issue that needs to be addressed. Okay. So this person here says, I can use an iPhone, but I don't know how to text. So we could use that as a quote to say, okay, if we're going to provide these types of technologies, then there has to be some kind of training. This is how old it is. Nobody knows how to text and nobody has phones. It's a good 15 years ago that this was done. So we would take these and lump them together into general themes. Okay. That might be in terms of here's the key issues, top priorities, Here's the type, because it's brainstorming. Here's the type of considerations as we run this program. We have to consider the training. We have to consider the type of technology. We have to consider the supports, the ownership, whatever it's going to be. Okay. And so we would take that information and we would turn that into a report. Our report is going to be structured around the themes that are identified. Remember, you are the voice of the participants, so you're trying to reflect what it is that happened. You're using quotes as evidence to summarize what you heard from your people. When you are doing your analysis and your reports, there are some important things to consider. One, we're looking for pattern recognition. And this is one reason that qualitative research is really moving towards large language models and machine learning and AI, is to find the patterns with a more objective approach. The challenge, of course, with more of these old school methods for qualitative analysis is there is some subjectivity here, which is I could be looking for certain themes or opinions, and that's what I'm going to find. So there is some personal bias that gets injected in these cut, sort, arrange type analysis here. So just be cognizant of that. And that's the other reason why you might print out your transcript, cut it up, and have different people sort it into themes that they identify. And you're looking for, did multiple people identify the same type of themes and come up with the same quotes and notes that support it. Leave out numbers. Not everyone answers every question. Your sample size is very small because you only did a focus group of 8 to 12 people. And some people may comment multiple times. So just because it appears multiple times doesn't mean that it's important to everybody. And then we want to be careful about interpreting body language. Now, if you're analyzing a transcript, there's no body language recorded here. If you were present at the event, you probably have some recognition of how attentive people were, how engaged people were. So just be careful in terms of how much are you being swayed by your interpretation of their body language from the event. We'll do one more video on focus groups. It'll look at the pros and cons of using focus groups. But just to wrap up our discussion here, as I go back in time, we have talked about in the previous videos a setting, getting your participants, the skills of the moderator, writing up the discussion guide, and doing your analysis and final report. So we've selected a facility and recruited participants. We've selected our moderator and created our discussion guide. We've conducted our focus group and then prepared that report for our client or higher ups, whoever we did this on behalf of. So to wrap up the discussion on focus groups in the last video, we'll just look at some pros and cons of focus groups and the use of online focus groups.